الحمد لله الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions maut, then hayat. And the ulama of tafsir have given many different meanings, but one thing that is a beautiful qawl from the ulama, from the great scholars of Islam, is maut here is in reference to the worldly life. Maut wal hayat ad-dunya. Why? Because the worldly life was meant for death. Nobody makes it out of this life alive, right? As they say. Because in this life, everybody will die. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls this life death, maut. And hayat is a reference to the everlasting life that has no death. That is the hereafter, right? Once you die from this dunya and you go into the life that is of the hereafter, an everlasting life, Allah calls that the real life. That's called hayat, right? Because there's no death. You can't call that death. You don't die anymore, right? And that's a beautiful thing to think about, that in reality, this life that we're so worried about, these 70 years, these 80 years, these 100 years, 20 years, whatever you may live, is really not even real life. This is just the test period we're in to begin where we're going to live forever and ever, right? So that beginning of the real life, of the life of the hereafter, starts with death. And that's where we're going to begin today. Okay? Now again, because once you die from this worldly life, you have the barzakh, you have the qabr, the life of the grave, then you have the resurrection of the day of judgment, the hashar, the yawm al-qiyamah, yawm al-deen, the day of judgment. Then you have the people that will go to the nar and people go to the jannah, because there's so much there. That life is everlasting, right? So much to discuss. Throughout these series, we're going to go over it. But I'm going to begin at the beginning of that life. In a beautiful hadith that is reported by Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu, and this is an authentic narration. Shaykh al-Albani, for example, went through many of the asanid discussing it from the Sunan books and the Jami' and so on, of At-Tirmidhi and others. It mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and pay attention to this hadith, a very important hadith. He was at the funeral, at the janazah of one of the Ansar. Now this hadith, as in the Musnad Imam Ahmad and other books, it's come through many different chains, authentic as I mentioned, and it's something that has come through many wordings, meaning that the Sahaba, they narrated it, and each one, they had their understanding of the word. Some comprehended more and gave a longer version, some grasped fewer. So I'm going to bring it together as kind of a concise summary. So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the sunnah, when you pray the janazah, there is no ijtima'i, like congregational dua after janazah. Some of the people, they have this bid'ah now, where after the janazah is done, they get everybody together and they all make a congregational dua, right? Everybody together. But Rasulullah didn't do this. Now, for you as an individual, when you're standing over the grave, individually, making dua yourself for the one that has passed away, nothing wrong with that. But even if you look at the kutub of the fuqaha, of the madahib, in the Hanafi fiqh, for example, they say to make a congregational dua after janazah is bid'ah. Nor did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam start giving speeches afterwards. Right? This is another thing we see nowadays. Sometimes when there is a janazah, subhanallah, the imam of every masjid, the imams from every masjid have like a competition. And one gives like a lecture, and I have seen even people that brought podiums, speakers. In San Diego, there's brothers that bring big old portable speakers, and then one imam gives a talk, and the other's like, I gotta outdo him, and he gives a talk, and it's like, what is this? This is not the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu gave khutbah on Jum'ah, he gave khutbah on the Eidain, he gave talks, but he didn't give khutub at the janazah. But occasionally what he would do, as the hadith of Ali radiyallahu anhu in Bukhari as well, and this hadith of Abu Darda that we have here in front of us, is he would go to the side and he would sit down, and whoever was with him, he would give them a reminder. Right? It's not a lecture. He didn't stand up and start, giving a khutbah. But he would, in this hadith, there was a small wall, like a small wall. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went, sat down on it. And the Sahaba went with him. And he looked down, and then he looked up. And then he looked down, and then he looked up. And then he looked down a third time, and he looked up. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do such a thing, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they would ask about it. They would inquire about it. Right? They would want to learn. Today, a lot of times what happens with us is we kind of see, for example, a person of knowledge doing something, or we're just like, yeah, whatever. We don't really, or we'll try to either make a video clip of it and, oh, look, he's doing something crazy. Like instead of learning, we just have this bughz nowadays. May Allah forgive us as a ummah. But the Sahaba didn't. They liked to be clear. Like when they saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his wife, making 2 rak'ah after Asr in the time of Nahi. His wife, she asked him, Messenger of Allah, what is this? And then he explained it to her that these were the sunan of Dhuhr that I had missed because the people made me busy, so I'm catching up on it. Now the benefit of that is we got to learn the hukam. That even in the time of Nahi, you can make rak'atayn. So here the Sahaba, they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why did you do this? Right? So then he explained, because Allah adhar, he made apparent to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam some of the things that are ghaib for us. We're not saying that Rasulullah has the knowledge of the ghaib. Only Allah, as in Surah Mulk and other places we find, that only Allah has the knowledge of the unseen. Only Allah. But for example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went on Isra al-Mi'raj. He saw things above the samawat that we haven't seen, right? That are not seen to us. He saw Jannah, he saw Jahannam. That's ghaib for us, right? But that's because Rasulullah made it apparent. He showed it to him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So from that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam what happens at the beginning of this journey of the afterlife. And that's our lecture today. Yeah? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told them about the pious slave of Allah, the one who is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is, understand something, this is not a course about some kind of philosophy, some kind of Greek, Aristotle or somebody. No, this is about a haqq, about a truth from the nusus, from the Quran and from hadith. And it's something that's going to be coming upon each one of us. Meaning this afterlife is going to come upon you. For example, if you're sitting in a train or a bus or on a plane, and they say, hey, we're going to land in this city, or we're going to stop in this city. You could be on that train and be like, no, we're not. But you're going to get there, inshallah, right? And when you get there, whether you denied it or not, you'll still be there. If you get on a bus going to Vancouver, right? And inshallah, if Allah wills, you're going to Vancouver. You could be on that bus and say, nope, I'm not going to Vancouver. But you're on the bus, and the bus is going to stop, and the bus driver is going to be like, yo, it's Vancouver, get off, eh? So you could deny it all you want, but you're going to get there anyway. So same is true for the akhirah. You can deny it. I know people that I grew up with that were like, I'm going to live forever. Come on. Gangsters, we don't die, we multiply. You do die. You got plenty of graveyards filled with them, right? Nobody's going to live forever, right? They used to have these titles for the kings in the past. They would say the ever living. But they're all dead. So the reality is death is going to come upon every one of us. So that's a haqq, that's a reality, that's a truth. So now, are you going to prepare for it or not? That's your issue. You're going to get to Vancouver. Are you going to be ready for it? Are you going to be with the right clothing for it, or the right preparations for it, the zad, as we say, the provisions that you need? Are you going to have it or not? That's your choice. You can close your eyes and be like, I'm not going to die, I'm not going to die, I'm not going to die. And then you're going to die. Or you can be intelligent. Faddal. So here, at the time of death, the malaika, they come to the people. And this is something that we find in the Quran as well. When we look at وَالنَّازِيَاتِ غَرْقًا وَالنَّاشِطَاتِ نَشْطًا, when we look at the tafsir of these ayat, what is meant by that? It is a reference to the malaika, to the angels. Gharqa means that when they take the ruh of the disobedient slave of Allah, of the fasiq, the fajr, the kafir, the mushrik, they take it in such a rough way that it destroys, it's very harmful. And nashta is to be something soft, nicely. Right? When they take the ruh of the mu'min, it's done in a way that is as easy as possible. Even then, there are sakaratul maut. Death still has the hardships of death because you're transitioning. You know, when a baby is being born into this world, when you're starting this life, the delivery can be easy or difficult, but it's still not easy, right? Those of you that have kids or have been there when your wife or had a child, you know that pregnancy is difficult, but some are worse than others. And childbirth is difficult, but some are harsher than others. Some, the labor goes into, I've known people with 9 hours and 10 hours, and some it goes days. And some in a few hours, very easily the child is delivered. Even the easy delivery is not easy. It's a hardship. May Allah reward women for the hardships that they go through at childbirth. But now we ask Allah to always make it easy. We always prefer that Allah makes things easy for us, right? So death is never going to be without any pain. It's always going to be a difficult because you're transitioning. Even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was passed away from this dunya, there was sakaratul maut. And Aisha radiallahu anha said that I realized that day that even the pious, it's a difficult transition. But for the believer, it's made easy. For the believer, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it where it will not be something that destroys and harms and is extremely painful and things. Nashta, softly they take the ruh out. But for the disbeliever, it's something very harsh. It's very difficult. It's something that from that moment onwards, from that point of death onwards, the punishment has begun. The malaika, they take it in a rough way. And that's the first step of the akhirah. And inshallah, we'll continue from that after salah. Jazakumullahu khairan. When you're in your classes, you're not getting, you might get financial aid, but you're not getting paid to be there. It's not like after every class, they're like, great job, here's a check. Right? You go to high school, 11th grade, 10th grade, whatever, you don't get out of biology class and they're like, hey, great job, here's a check. No, but you're struggling, right? You have to take the class, you have to sit through boring teachers, you have to take tests, you have to prepare, you have to write reports, you have to present, you have all these struggles, which you're not getting paid right there. But why are you doing it? Because you hope that someday you will graduate from high school and then inshallah college and university and all of that. And then once all those 12 years of high school and 2 years of associates and 4 years of a bachelor's and 3-4 years of a master's, whatever you study, then you finally get those degrees and that pieces of paper and you hope that you'll go and you'll get a good job. And then that day, you'll start getting paid. You don't get paid in high school, right? Dunya is the same thing. We're working, but you don't go make salah and suddenly, $10,000 drop from the sky. No, that's not what we're doing it for. Yes, Allah blesses you in the dunya. Yes, you have barakat and things, but that's not the final, right? But when you get to death, that's where you get your result. Now in dunya, you could get a PhD and not get a job. That's the thing of dunya. There is no guarantee. But with the akhirah, it's a guarantee. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always keeps His promises. So here, every mushrik, everybody who thought that, today sometimes I was giving da'wah, and I'm going to end because the water is here, so tayammum finishes. I was giving da'wah, And one atheist came to me, and he told me, "Aren't you going to feel like a real, fool?" He used the worst word. I'm not going to use it, right? When you die and realize there's no God. I told him, not as much of an idiot as you're going to feel when you die and realize there is. So, deny it all you want, but every atheist knows you didn't come from yourself. Somebody made you. Every atheist realized that the world's in such a perfection, it didn't just go by itself, right? And every atheist that day will realize that they wasted their life, that whatever desires they lived and enjoyed were not worth that moment of death, let alone what's going to come afterwards. And inshallah, for the sake of time now, we're going to stop here, but we will continue from this point onwards. So the Hadith Abu Darda, we just began it. I will inshallah take you guys through it, and through the process of death, and then the qabr, the barzakh, and inshallah the raising of the Day of Judgment. And we will study it in the light of Quran and Sahih Ahadith, not stories and things, but bringing fawaid, bringing beneficial things from the life that we are living so we can relate. And this is the last point I want to make. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never puts upon us something to believe in that is beyond our ability to believe in it. That's a deep thought. Let it sink for a minute. Right? If you look at the concept of the Trinity, it doesn't make sense. Every Christian in the end, like you can watch our debates, right? In the end, they will say it's a mystery. Nobody understands it. It doesn't make sense. We just believe. That's, because it doesn't make sense, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't put an aqeedah on us like this. Our aqeedah, all of it makes sense. One Allah, always been there, always will be there, all powerful, all capable, sent all the anbiya, same message, beautiful. Now somebody might say that how can somebody be dead in a grave and be punished, and all these things that we're going to talk about, or being ripped through their body with malaika, and we don't see any of it, we don't hear any of it. How could that be, right? Now, of course, if Allah orders it is, but Allah gave us a beautiful example so that it's not something beyond our comprehension. And what is that? What did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said is the sister of death? Sleep. What's the dua when you wake up? Alhamdulillah ladhi ahyana ba'dal mamatana wa ilayhi nushur. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah who gave us life after He caused us to die, and we will return to Allah. Now that's a beautiful dua. Sahih hadith, by the way. So this sleep is the smaller death. When you sleep, you're out of this world. You're no longer conversating with people. You're no longer aware of what's going on. You're just laying there like a dead body. Now, the person could be sleeping next to you, and this is very interesting. And they could be seeing the worst nightmare. That could be physically, nightmares sometimes physically harm you. Your heart rate goes up, your stress levels go up. People that have certain conditions, we study in medical sciences and stuff, right? It can have a physical effect even, right? So they're going through all that hardship, that punishment in their sleep, right next to you, and you don't realize it. They could be getting whipped and all this stuff. Now again, sleeps are dreams. The qabr, the azab is actual qabr, but the example is there. That's why we have the fire in the dunya, so we can get an example of the fire of the akhirah. Of course, the fire of Jahannam is much worse. But if we didn't know what fire is, how would we comprehend? So Allah gave us a small example to understand a big one. So sleep is a small death. It's a small example to understand death. And then you wake up. Kuffar, how can somebody die and be raised again? You do it every night. In a lesser sense. You go to sleep, you could be enjoying your dream. You could be seeing Jannah in your dream. You could be seeing the Prophet ﷺ in your dream. You could be enjoying, and dreams, interestingly, you can see dreams for a longer period in a shorter period of time. Meaning in your dream, you could be a month into your dream, but really it was like an hour while you were asleep. Right? So this is amazing. So now in the qabr, You could be enjoying in the qabr, in the barzakhi life. You could be seeing malaika at that point of death, or you could be getting punished and your body laying there, nobody sees it. Yeah? And this is why Allah gave us such beautiful examples to make our hearts have firm yaqeen in that which is in front of us. وَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا. We'll continue on with Shaykh Ibrahim Zidan.